Hello, hope everyone's having a good one. I gotta be honest, slightly frustrated. I spent 30 minutes recording a video for you guys. My mic was not being picked up. Yes, the scene that I was on was not working properly. So, recording number 2, I'm going to be going over coloring your terrains. I'm going to hopefully make this not a 30-minute tutorial then, and I'm going to mostly just keep everything relatively brief here. So the two nodes that I will spend most time using will be colorize and color adjust. There are other nodes like color mix, color splatter, color tile, and they do work. I haven't really found a single use case for them just yet, but I feel like that also could be because I've never really fully explored them. So maybe those use cases could, I guess, pop up if I spent a bit of time just really playing around. But thus far, I haven't found any case of using them, and I don't fully understand I guess the cases of them. So, if anybody does know what they're for entirely and have used them in past projects, feel free to message me, and I'd be intrigued to know if there's any like full-on use cases for them. But for the rest of the case, you're pretty much only going to use colorized nodes anyway. So, a very simple, I'll show you using this. I've got this really basic desert scene. If you want to know how to do it, I can make a video, just let me know in the comments. But from a basis, it's just using the undulations preset, and then just playing around with a warp node to give you a basic result. Rotated it, used pretty much the same one. Into blend, height map, set to minimum to get these really nice peaks. And yeah, so if you were to... you're interested in making I guess a texture for that, we can just drag out and go colorize. And this is going to be how you add colors, right? So as you can see here, once I unplug, we've now got an orange terrain. So this is just set with single color, and this is great for just look dev. You're working through. I always find the default white to be a bit way too overbearing. When you have it plugged out, it's just the default white. I feel like a gray would be a bit nicer to look at. So just whenever, like the first thing I always do is I go plug it in and shove it into a gray for a nicer result. Getting a little bit of weird stuff happening in the corners there. That might be because of the rotation, but oh well. Overall, looks fine. Next we have a 2 color interpolation. And to show a use case of this would be if I dragged out of the height map, and we're going to be utilizing the gradient mask. So from here, I'm going to use, for example, a height. Mask height. So you always need to have these plugged in to the height map, and then from here we can use, for example, gradient. Now, gradient mask is used by, I guess, it takes this mask here where we got the white being, one color with black being used by another color. So if I play around with this in range region to get a result that has a good mix of, darker and lighter regions, we can see here the darker regions being the redder, orange or red color, to the lighter regions being gray. Now from here you can get a pretty solid result. Let's just show for an example here of my desert sort of here, and we can just play around with these colors here to get a nice darker color going over there, the nice lighter color here. Get some nice looking deserts there with some cool gradient. Alternatively, we can go to a color gradient here, and for example, if you search up a reference here, I'm just going to color pick from dark to light, as I know that that's what I'm after, where the lower regions are dark to therefore light. I just drag it over. You can also get a similar result. I might re-drag over just for that bit of a break up there, and I can, for example, play around with this to, I guess, utilize different regions of the gradient. So as you can see here, we can break it up over here. Playing around with also the remap here as well will give you a different result, and you can increase and decrease the mask to give you different results. So that's also pretty helpful. I believe I also You can also just do a default scene of what I've used in the for this as well. Of I'm just gonna undo that so you can see the actual colors here. You can make your own one. So for example, just sitting double clicking, you can change the colors here. And this is how you can also set your own colors if you want specific colors to fit your needs, as well as just clicking anywhere through the graph. You can add your own ones, and once again, just double clicking for these different results there. You've also got special tools that are pretty helpful. For example, this chaos mode. And for example, if I do by terrain lock, and I increase, for example, the hue, Q chaos a little bit, the value chaos I find pretty helpful. The scale as well can be a great. If I increase like the value just so it's a bit more obvious, you can sort of see how you can get a little bit of extra breakup going. Alternatively, you can decrease that and have it be like a subtle shift in the values, as well as like hues if you want that, or saturation. You want some regions more saturated than others. That's a great way of adding extra details without having to do any extra gradient masking and whatnot. For my next case scenario, I'm going to show off, I guess, how I go about texturing with multiple different aspects of things. So I'm going to start off by adding a color node for this example, which is very similar to my last tutorial. So check out my last tutorial if you want to see how this is done. I might just lower that region there, as I'm not too happy with it. So I think I'm just going to play around with the relative, maybe the scale, as well as just this relative height, I think. There we go, that should make it less harsh. And so for example with this, if I were to texture this, I'm going to go with the mountains first, then we're going to place the grass over, and then I'm going to add snow. And this will cover all the other regions that you should need. So plugging in, for example, this colorize node, and we can now access, for example, here, some default, I guess, color gradients that are provided through Geogen effects. Now, something that I really like about Gaea is there's a heap and heap of these gradients, and I think that's something that I hope to see in the future for this program, a bunch of these gradients. And something that would also be helpful would be a little gradient preview maybe beside them, just so we can sort of see, the rough result. Is, Planet 4 is helpful, but I don't actually know what Planet 4 necessarily is referring to. But you can add your own ones. So for example, I've got my gradient here. I can just click plus, name it gradient test. And as you can see here, we've now got gradient test. I'm just going to delete that. Once again, you can also import gradients. So here I've got a bunch of presets that I've done. There's an EmberCG. That also means that every program, you go, and I'm not too sure if Liquidgen can use these, I don't believe so, but Embergen can use these as well. So if you've got some cool gradients that you've made previously in Embergen, feel free to use those. But otherwise, you can also make your own ones in separate programs, as well as if you want to export them, you can also export them as a PNG. If you were to bring it into something like Unity, Unreal or something, then you've also got that. But I can go, for example, like a mountain rock that I've made in the past, and maybe that's going to suit my use case. So for example, this isn't necessarily going to be maybe exactly what I'm after, but I think this should be fine. And I can, for example, drag out a gradient mask here. There's going to include some breakup, as I've used over there as an example. I found for this, maybe a slope mask might give me an alright result. It's not a great result, but it adds a little bit of interest to it, I guess. So There we go now. It's not working before. I can like play around with some of these. So increasing the result is going to increase, I guess, the range at which these are being used, as well as if I decrease it, it's just going to be a lot more flat colors, as you can see here. I can play around with some of these here, these parameters, if I want to break up what things are. I'm not actually particularly liking it. I'm just going to look at some of my other ones. I'm not too sure if I have anything that I'm particularly going to be liking here. This one's not terrible. I feel like I can probably use this one a bit more and maybe get some better results with it. Something like that might be right. And next, I'm going to be showing off something like the Colour Adjust node here. And from here, I've got my basic thing. I'm not really liking that it's got some bluer regions and stuff, and I feel like it's way too light. So here I can use the Colour Adjust to, as it's, I guess, within the name, adjust them, and that's adjusted that. I'm going to adjust the vibrance as well. I don't want really any color really going into that, so once again, saturation can give you a similar result. Alternatively, you've got this hue adjust. So let's say I wanted, you know, a different colored. I wanted more like a greeny, yellowy, you know, color from scheme for my mountain, and that will give me a, you know, that result that I'm kind of after there. And you know, that's pretty good. I'm once again at a fairly high terrain resolution, so you know, increasing that will give you better results there. As long as your computer can run it, of course. Next up, once again, I'm going to go over the grass. So grass can be a fairly simple thing to add. So for example, we're just going to add another colorize, and this is how we add I guess a second color as to break everything up. So from here, I'm going to show what the mask, I guess, input does. And so with this, I'm going to use propagation, which is one of my favorite nodes to use when it comes to these sorts of textures. And as you can see here, it effectively just, you know, like looks effectively top down, you know, where are there not that many regions where there's, I guess, parts that are, you know, are pretty flat. It looks for like those flat regions, as you can see, and we can change with like the slope angle for what it, you know, will accept when it comes to the slope. So for example, we use, let's just get a gradient and let's look at some of these vegetation defaults. As you can see here, we got some pretty nice results here. I might look at this, for example. This may not be what I want to use, but if I use a gradient mask, and we can look at something like noise here, decrease the scale, and as you can see here, we can get some pretty cool results here. Just straight inbuilt in. I'm quite liking this actually. So what I might do here is use another color adjust. One thing that I do know is not going to work too well is because this is a color adjust after using all these, you're going to run into an issue where it adjusts everything. Now, if you run into that issue, very simple fix. We're going to utilize a color mix node. So for example, we can go foreground, background, and plug this one in. And that's going to work perfectly. Sorry, this is kind of looking terrible in its organization. I can unplug that there. Hopefully this is going to work well. Multiply. Trying to find the right result. It can sometimes be a bit of a pain. But for this, I'm just going to increase the value here. Maybe the saturation a bit as well. And let's play around with these. I don't think there's something that some of the tools use, especially the substance tools, is using the arrow keys once you've selected to see which you know, result. I guess it just scrolls through these different results, and that's something that I would like to see hopefully in the future. But let's see which one's going to give us a nice result. I don't think we're getting really any results that I'm actually particularly after, unfortunately. Difference, pin light. Unfortunately, this is something that I do struggle with, trying to find what's going to give us the right result. So you can always play around with that, but sort of not overlaying particularly too great. Which one? Sometimes it's just a little bit of a play around. I can always change which one's the background and which one's the foreground, but often that's just not going to give me the greatest result either. Sometimes you can just play around with something like that, but then it's got its own issues. So I might just have to do that for now, because I can't be bothered spending ages figuring out which is the correct result. The correct thing that I'm doing. So just to offset that, I'm going to use a color adjust node to just bring up some of those regions. So let's just increase the value there, and that sort of brings us back to where we were before. Usually there's like a blend node that you can use that gives off a better result, but there isn't, unfortunately. I'm not too sure why. Sometimes alpha works properly, sometimes it just gives you a bit of a weird result. Maybe I'd have to play around with the weight, but oh well. Maybe it'd be worthwhile playing around with the weight if I plugged it into the mask there. It's just going to give us maybe that might be a better result here if I plug into foreground and background. Yeah, I mean, it's got a similar issue. Similar issue, just different kind of, I guess, issue there. Either way, I guess that works. There, and next I'm going to show off snow using a full-on, well, I use mask there as well, but we'll show off another mask. And so this can be very simple. If you want snow, you can just plug in a colorize set to, for example, white. You can have your fancy colors. I've used fancy colors in the past, but here, as you can see here, we've got this mask from the snow filter, and we can just plug that directly into the mask here to give us snow that gets placed around the map here. Which is, it just works out pretty great, really simple and easy, and it's powerful, you know, I guess, addition to these filter nodes. Once again, sediment, you wouldn't want to do this far in the group of nodes, but it's sort of the same story here, where the sediment here can be placed, boom, using that mask, and you can get that pretty cool result there. So it's ideally something that you'd want to use significantly earlier, potentially. To show an example of it working decently well is if I find this here, which is my rock, add a colorize there just before that mix, plug the sediment into the mask, and set this to be a maybe just like a lighter tone. And as you can see here, once we plug it in, our sediment's not a lighter tone. You'd usually use like actually, I could probably actually find a bit of sediment here with one of these mountains. This isn't going to be great, but it might give you an alright result. Plugging in gradient, selecting something like that with some sediment, and of course using a gradient for breakup. You can always use other gradient nodes, so other mask nodes for these. You can go, for example, cavity, and plugging in the output there. That's going to give you a result that fits, but some of these noise patterns, unfortunately, sometimes aren't going to give you the result that you may be after, and that's sometimes one of those things. Why? Yeah, once again, we're getting a bit of a weird result of the alpha. This is why sometimes it's just a bit of a weird thing. I'm using the weighting, so I'm not too sure why that's giving me such a weird result. I don't know. I'd probably have to play with it a little bit off the recording, so I'm not too sure why that's just being a bit bit weird and not so helpful to me today, but it does work in the past, and that's what I generally would end up using. So for anybody interested in that, that's kind of where I'd go with it. So it does break up some stuff. Not necessarily the result. I don't know. That's just being a bit of a unfortunate issue with me today. But yeah, hopefully this has been this is 10 minutes shorter than my last recording, but yeah, hopefully this has been a I guess helpful tutorial showing off I guess the basics that you'll be using these color nodes for. Now, once again, just to reiterate, if anybody from the Django effects team does end up watching this tutorial, please, if anything, just take some some inspiration from from Gaea with their Satmap nodes, as I find their Satmap nodes can give you some really cool results. Satmaps, and it can be a very easy way of implementing results that may suit. Like, we've got hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of different things, and you can go blue, for example, for a couple of different ones. You got sandy for a bunch of different ones, and the pros to these is everything's kind of in here. You don't need to color pick. Where color picking can be helpful, it's therefore not a necessity. So I think an example of where I've found this helpful in personal use, just opening up, for example, Gaea 2. I think it was a mountain play around. Oh, well, I guess Gaea 2 is not stable enough for me to load, but you can get some really cool results with that. So I'm just kind of hoping that, Alpha, I've mentioned this a trillion times, and it's a great tool thus far, but I feel like these colorized nodes, if you could get a bunch of those sort of like preset materials working, well, I think that would be a pretty awesome thing. Now, ultimately, it does become a hit or miss thing, because you could argue, I think it does become a point where it's just like you're ultimately using these as masks. So if I were to use this for like a full-on I guess project, I would export this as a mask. I would export it as export mask, right? And I would therefore, whatever is masked by this, I would use something that I've made in, for example, Substance Designer for some actual full-on textures that I've made in Substance Designer. So ultimately, if you're trying to make some hyper-realistic stuff, that is the way that you would actually go. But I do think, just for look dev reasons, and if you just want to stick to just this program, especially as for some just real basic stuff, that is something that would be highly appreciated. But as you can see, you can get some really nice results anyway, just using some basic tools there, and all the other tutorials that I've made in the past have gotten pretty good results. So yeah, for anybody, I guess, ultimately, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. If you got any other things that you want me to record, or you got any questions about this or any other aspects, feel free to write in the comments, and I can hopefully answer those questions. But yeah, hopefully you can sort of see, I guess, how colorized nodes work, and how easy it is to be set up. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Have a good one, and we'll catch you guys next time. See ya.